Good morning and welcome. This is Father Marcus from the Costa Blanca Anglican Chaplaincy. Delighted that we're spending just a few moments together reflecting on some of the big questions of life. And at the moment, we're thinking about Remembrance Day, Remembrance Sunday tomorrow, Remembrance Day on Wednesday. And it's great that we take time out every year to make sure we think deeply and thoroughly about the issues of the past and the present and indeed the future. It breaks my heart in the same way that it breaks your heart when I contemplate the death of so many people that came about through what were called world wars. It breaks my heart, it really does. And in particularly because so many of them were so young. And when people are young and full of life and full of enthusiasm and full of hope and an offering of the future, and then to lose everything for them is devastating for a whole generation, and then devastating for the next generation. So what I want to do for a moment is just to reflect just a little bit about trying to remember what we felt like when we were young. I'm incredibly old, and I'm sure you're just a young thing, but when I think back at my youth, I had a sense of being invincible. Of course I did. I remember when I was about in my mid-20s, my friend Steve and uh, I left the parish of Eastbourne where I was a curate, and we drove to India in a Ford Luton van filled up with supplies for Mother Teresa. And we thought that we were going to go and fix the world. Yes, we did. We went off. In those days, there was no mobile phones, or we didn't have them anyway. There was no sat nav. We had some rudimentary maps that just pointed from one country to the next. And we just went off. We had a van load of stuff, and we went off full of this idea that we were going to go and solve the problems of India. Were we naive? Were we simplistic? Were we idealistic? Well, of course we were. But we also had about us a real sense of passion. You know, we really wanted to do something, and we were determined to get there. And we did. We got so lost at one stage we didn't even know what country we were in. But we drove all the way from Eastbourne to Calcutta, and we delivered our supplies, and we worked in an orphanage for a month, and we did what we tried to do. We were adventurous, and we had a go. But we were young, and we came back, and we made the tiniest difference you could ever imagine. But we were young, and we had a crack at it. And I know that in your life, when you were young, you had a go at stuff. You really did. I want to move on to when my children were young. I got three sons, Joe, Adam and Tom. And in their late teens, they got right into music. They kicked me out of my bedroom and turned it into a recording studio. And they used to have band practice in there. And all their friends were in the band, and everyone was hanging around in the vicarage, and it was great. And there was powerful music coming out of there. And I loved it. I loved the whole idea of them making music. And I used to go and listen. I couldn't help but hear it. I used to go and there was one track that they played, and they played it over and over again because they were learning it and they were practicing it, and they'd written it themselves. And Matt, our friend who was a singer, was singing and included these lines: "I don't want peace for our nation. I want peace for the world." And how great was that? You know, these young people, they were doing what my friend Steve and I were doing. Maybe statements like that are a little bit naive. Maybe it's a little bit simplistic. But in their hearts and in their minds, they had an adventure going on that they wanted to change the world. Of course they did. They wanted to change the world. They wanted to make a difference, and they were going to make a difference through their music. I don't want peace for my nation. I want peace for the world. And it was delightful to think that they were not looking in, not just looking at their own place, but they were looking out, and they were attempting to include and embrace everyone. Was it naive? Was it simplistic? Was it idealistic? Of course it was. But once again, they were passionate and they were determined and they had a sense of adventure about them. And we put these things down a little bit to youth. And as we mature, sometimes we let go of some of those things. And we think, well, we can't do that. We can't make that much of a difference. We can't sort out India. We can't sort out the poverty. We can't sort out war. And when we get that feeling, we sometimes let go of the depth that is really in our hearts and minds. Let me take you back to what Jesus said. Jesus said, "You've heard that it was said you should love your neighbour and hate your enemies. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes the sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust." Was Jesus being a little bit naive, praying for enemies, praying for those who persecute you, loving your enemies? Was he being simplistic? Was he being idealistic? Or was he speaking the truth? And did he have a sense of passion? And did he have a sense of commitment and adventure and determination? And I think he did. And I think we can learn a lot from those feelings that young people have, because the older we get, perhaps a little bit more cynical we get, and perhaps we give up on the big questions of life. But we shouldn't. I really don't believe we should, because Jesus teaches us the big questions. And we wouldn't say that he was naive, and we wouldn't say that he was simplistic. We would say he was the Son of God. And he teaches us, and we ignore his teaching at our peril. So when we remember today and tomorrow and Wednesday those countless young things who lost their lives because they wanted freedom and they wanted peace and they expressed love, let's not think or believe or fall into a trap of accepting that they did it in vain. Young people today still have that sense of passion and still have that sense of determination and still have that sense of adventure, and we do well to learn from them. And we do well to learn from Jesus Christ. So, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Bless you, bless you, bless you, bless you. Peace. Amen.